All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome back to another Explainer, where we take fascinating stories, break them all down, and figure out the core truths hidden inside. Today, we're looking at something that is absolutely everywhere in our culture. The flashing lights, the massive trophies, the whole glitz and glamour of overnight success. I mean, we all love it, right? We love seeing a champion standing on top of the world. But today, we are going to dive into where true champions actually start out. And trust me, it is rarely under the spotlight.
So where do champions really start? To get to the bottom of this, I want to introduce you to a 12-year-old boy named Leo. Now, if you looked at Leo, you absolutely would not see a prodigy. He wasn't the tallest kid in his class, he wasn't the fastest, and he certainly wasn't the strongest. In fact, on his middle school track team, Leo finished dead last in every single track meet. Every single time. This kind of completely shatters our normal assumptions about natural talent, doesn't it? We usually just assume people who end up great, well, started out great. But Leo? He was the kid crossing the finish line long after literally everyone else had packed up and gone home.
Which brings us to part one, the starting line.
You know, it's incredibly easy to keep going, to keep pushing yourself when everyone is cheering for you, when you have a massive crowd screaming your name. But what on earth do you do when the cheering has completely stopped? For Leo, the reality of his starting line meant standing on a dusty, empty running track at dusk, nursing scraped knees. The only sound left was the echo of his own heavy breathing and that incredibly quiet, insidious whisper in the back of his head telling him to just quit. We always expect the instant validation of overnight success, but the stark reality? It's often finishing last, totally alone under dimming lights. You see, natural talent is really just a head start, and hey, a head start is great. But if you don't have it, the journey can feel incredibly lonely. Leo didn't just lack a head start, he was operating from a massive deficit. And without that natural gift, he had to face that cold, hard reality every single day.
Moving on to part two, the definition of defeat. Because here's the thing, when you are operating from a deficit, eventually someone is going to tell you to stop. For Leo, it was his own coach. And his coach wasn't even being mean about it. He just pulled him aside and gently suggested, hey, maybe running isn't your thing, Leo. There's absolutely no shame in trying something else. When an expert tells you it's over, your brain instantly starts looking for a comfortable, pride-protecting exit strategy. It is so incredibly easy to just nod, take the out, and walk away forever. But Leo had a completely different definition of defeat. To him, defeat isn't losing a race, it's choosing not to line up again. So the very next morning at 5 a.m., pouring rain outside, literally the exact moment most people would gladly take that exit strategy, Leo put on his hoodie, stepped out of his front door into the freezing rain, and started a slow, agonizing jog right into the storm. He chose to line up again.
Which leads us to part three, the invisible progress.
That one decision in the rain kicked off what is undoubtedly the longest and hardest phase of anyone's journey. Listen to this. The hardest part of never giving up is the silence. You work in the dark for months, sometimes years, waiting for a light that might never turn on. This was exactly Leo's life. Working out completely silently in a small garage, doing push-ups, squats, stretches in the dark, constantly wondering if any of this unseen effort would ever actually matter at all. We all fall into this trap for sure. We expect progress to look exactly like a staircase, a steady, step-by-step upward momentum. But the reality? The reality is that progress is a flat plateau. It is a long, grueling stretch where absolutely nothing seems to happen. Until suddenly, it happens all at once. If you are stuck on that flat plateau, it feels exactly like failure, even when you're actually putting in the work. Months just bled into a year, and then 2 whole years passed. If you looked at the scoreboard, literally nothing had changed. Leo was still not winning any races, but if you actually looked at Leo, his posture was growing stronger, his stride was getting noticeably cleaner. The progress was definitely there, but it was completely invisible to the outside world. And the most absolutely crucial shift that happened during this time on the plateau was internal. Leo was no longer racing the other boys on the track. He was fighting against the ghost of who he used to be. Every single day was just about beating yesterday's Leo. Then, in that secret garage notebook where he tracked everything, the numbers finally started to move. 6 minutes and 12 seconds for a mile. Okay, still not a champion's time, but for the boy who always came in dead last, this was the very first crack of light in the darkness. And then, those invisible, exhausting workouts began to yield real, hidden results. 5 minutes and 58 seconds. He literally broke the 6-minute barrier. The momentum is really picking up now. That flat plateau is finally starting to curve upward. 5:42. This right here is the absolute crescendo of his quiet training phase. All that silent work, all those grueling 5 a.m. runs in the pouring rain, they drastically dropped his time. He was completely transformed, and it set the stage perfectly for what was about to happen next.
And that brings us to part 4, the ultimate test.
4 solid years of silent work led directly to this exact moment. High energy, bright daylight, the massive regional finals. The absolute best runners in the entire state are lined up. And standing right there at the starting block of the 1,500-meter race is Leo. He's 16 now, lean, intensely focused, and still completely unnoticed by everyone up in the stands. The starter pistol goes off, and the race begins. By the final lap, the pace is just blistering. Leo's lungs are burning, the old voices are screaming at him to just slow down. And then, chaos strikes. 2 runners right ahead of him tangle their legs and trip hard. Leo has to abruptly leap over the pileup, he loses his footing, and suddenly, with only 200 meters left in the biggest race of his entire life, he drops all the way back to 5th place? I mean, it's an absolute disaster.
In that split second, life threw an incredibly unexpected hurdle at him, presenting 2 very clear choices. 1, use it as a perfect excuse to fail. Honestly, nobody would blame him for losing after a crash like that. Or 2, use it as fuel to fight even harder. Leo's eyes locked onto the finish line, and he made his choice. He launched into an all-out, desperate, heart and soul sprint toward the end, passing 4th place and then blowing right past 3rd.
Finally, part 5, redefining the finish line.
We are at the final 50 meters now. Leo is neck and neck with the reigning state champion. They are an absolute blur of motion as they cross the finish line together, a breathtaking photo finish that literally left the entire stadium holding its breath. Leo collapses to his knees, just gasping for air on the track. The scoreboard flashes. 2nd place. He lost by a fraction of a second. I know, right? He didn't get the cinematic Hollywood ending. He didn't get the gold medal or get to stand at the very top of the podium. In a movie, yeah, he would have won for sure, but this is reality.
Yet if you looked at Leo's face in that moment, he was crying, but he had this massive, undeniable smile breaking across his face. Why? Because he absolutely shattered his personal record. He didn't need the gold medal, because the boy who used to come in dead last, the boy who was told to just quit, had just proven he belonged among the absolute best. He redefined what winning actually meant. The victory wasn't the piece of metal, it was the simple fact that he was still standing.
So, what about you? Are you in the dark right now? Maybe you feel like you're stuck on that flat plateau we talked about. Maybe you feel like you are always coming in last, working in the absolute silence, and constantly wondering if all your unseen effort is really worth it. Is the light ever going to turn on? Never give up on the dark days. The light is coming. Remember Leo's story, and remember that the only absolute guarantee for failure is quitting. Defeat is simply choosing not to line up again. So, when the cheering stops and you are standing alone in the rain, will you take the easy exit or will you choose to line up again? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.